Hello everyone. Today I'm going to walk you through the deployment of Ubuntu 20.04, which is the latest Ubuntu distribution for Linux. And we're going to do it inside of a Type 1 hypervisor. Right now I'm using ESXi, also known as vSphere. And so let's go ahead and start with our VM construction. Now this is maybe a little bit different than your workstation player or your VirtualBox, but it has a lot of the same components. What you're going to do is you're going to name your VM. So we're going to go with Ubuntu, and we'll do 20.04, and I'll just name this one build out. And then we have to choose our OS family, which is going to be Linux. And then we're going to go through this and look for Ubuntu, and we're going to choose 64-bit. Next, it's going to ask me what my locations are for my storage and where I'm going to pull my storage from. We do have about 3.5 terabytes remaining, so I'm going to go ahead and pull that. Now, I'm going to give my system I would say a generous amount. You don't have to do this. If you're running this on your laptop, you may want to use maybe 2 or 4 CPUs, and that means cores on your CPU. I'm going to go with 8. And I'm going to give this system 16 gigs. So we're going to switch this over from megabytes to gigabytes. And because it's a test, I'm just going to go ahead and give it, I might use it for something else later on. So I'm going to give it 200 gigs of storage. I'm going to choose my network connection. Yours may be different. You may do a static, or you may do what you will call NATing, network address translation. You may bridge, you may give it its own network, so it has its own IP address. So you may see like VNet 1 or VNet 2 or VNet 0 when it comes to VMware. And when it comes to VirtualBox, you'll actually just choose bridge or its own network. I'm going to grab my ISO file. And this is my ISO file. As we see there, I got this ISO file a little while ago because the Ubuntu 20.04 actually released earlier in the year. After I have that, I'm going to go ahead and go through, validate all my parameters here, and finish it up. So that's just the shell, is what I created. If you're using vSphere, which you can use, you can get a learning tool for it, as long as you're not using it for production. And what I mean by production is you're not building an entire company or ecosystem out of it. If you're doing what I'm doing here, we have a lot of test networks, then it's perfectly fine. And you can go to VMware.com and find that, or also sign up for a vMug chapter or vMug membership and get the vMug Advantage. So I'm going to click on the VM shell that we have here. We're going to launch and start our Ubuntu setup. So let's make that a little bigger for our viewers. And as we see here, is checking the disk. And when it goes through this, it's actually checking our virtual disk. So just imagine that now you set up this disk and you made it so that this disk has a full unallocated space and it's sitting there, and that's what you're deploying your OS on. Alright, so there's the Panther there. Now, you can choose whichever language works for you. I'm going to choose English, and I'm going to do the install instead of just trying it out. If you're looking to just try it out, you're not fully sure that you want to go with Ubuntu for your usage of Linux, then you can actually just go ahead and try it out. But if you know you want to use Ubuntu, just go ahead and do install. After install, they're going to ask you for your keyboard layout. If you're feeling like you want to be experimental, there's a lot of other languages here if you want. I'm going to stick with the default traditional US English. And I'm going to choose normal installation. And just because if you're not sure what you're going to do, you can go ahead and add in the third-party software like Wi-Fi hardware, as well as additional media formats, especially if you're using third-party Wi-Fi adapters. If you're using on a laptop or you have a system or a server, if you're doing any testing, pen testing, network engineering, you may have more than one adapter that you're using for processes or systems, and that's a good reason to install those. So go to continue, and boom. Okay. So next we have, this computer currently has no detected operating systems, and that's because it's looking at our allocated space. Remember that 200 gigs that I put in a little space for our disk or our storage? That's what it's talking about. So we're gonna go and install now, and we're gonna get a little pop-up, and here's our pop-up that's making sure that we know we're about to erase anything that possibly is lingering on a disk or that unallocated space. It says, if you continue, the changes below will be written to the disk, otherwise you are able to make further changes manually. So we have our partition tables that are being drawn out there. We also have our swap space, which is a smaller amount of space. And let's continue forward. And we're going to choose our time zone. That way our time is accurate. We're in Phoenix, so that's what we're going to do. And now create your username, your account. Make it something simple. So for me, we'll just go with the traditional Cyber Shogun. And we'll do Shogun Realm for my computer's name. That way, if you have like an SSH server or you're setting up a remote server or something, you need to reach it, you need to have a computer name, at least you have something that's more unique to yourself. You can make it longer, you can make it more obfuscated, so it's harder for other people to jump on it. It'll be pretty solid. Give ourselves a solid username, our password. Make sure it's strong, security first. There we go. And just to make this a lot quicker, you can go ahead and do login automatically. When it goes to sleep, it will still ask for a password when it goes back in, so you don't have to worry about being stuck at the lock screen or having it always just log in automatically. And as we go through this, we see our processes, and we can make this a little bit bigger. There we go. And if you wanted to, you can actually look at different things that are installing here, or you can just go ahead and reduce that and wait for it to go. So as we wait, a couple good tips for you is that most distributions have a same type of sequence when it comes to Linux. There are a couple others that are different. So if you continue to follow us or subscribe, you'll see a lot more Linux distributions. We'll go through how to build LAMP servers. We'll go through how to set up a SQL server. We'll go through all these different iterations. We have a lot more content coming out for you as well. Very important. Pretty awesome. Now it's going through its install after it copied all the files, which should take about 5 minutes for those of you who like to watch loading bars. We're not going to really do anything in this area, but if you wanted to, you can fast forward. This is going to be about 15 seconds, but it's enough time for me to talk about Red Hat distribution, which is an amazing enterprise distribution. Ubuntu is definitely making their waves in enterprise as well. And they do have a server and desktop experience. If you're not familiar with Linux, I would definitely go with the desktop, so you have a GUI or a graphic user environment that will allow you to actually have a little bit more forgiveness on the point and click failover if you do not know how to operate or work inside the terminal or command line. So it's very important. There's other distros out there like CentOS, Fedora, you have Linux Mint, you have Debian, which is pretty much like the father, and obviously the mother depends on who you're talking to. It could be Unix, but it all works kind of similar. Some of the biggest things are going to be like your distributions and your distros. But don't worry, there's going to be a lot more content to go through. Some of the differences between Ubuntu, Red Hat, Fedora, CentOS, as well as Debian, and we'll continue to move through it. So now that we've gone through that, obviously we've seen our installer pretty much take a Red Bull and it's starting to pick up. So let's go ahead and track through that. I think my dog grabbed a Red Bull as well. And like I said, feel free to fast forward to the end result if you want. And now it's depackaging a bunch of libraries and manuals, as well as a lot of our systems that are built into Ubuntu. And Ubuntu has a lot of built-in packages and tools, which would be in another video of ours, to kind of go through those tools that are built in before you have to wonder and dive in. We can just show you how to activate them and get them configured. But it's all good knowledge. If it's your first experience, I would definitely pay attention to this line, because you can see what's going in your system and what you do and do not have. So I'm going to do a brief pause here so you don't have to sit through all this. Nope, no need. There we go. Now that our install is completed, we're going to go to restart now. And it's going to restart our machine. And if you're on a digital machine or a virtual machine, type 2 hypervisor or type 1, it's going to tell you to enter. Type 1 is a lot more forgiving, so you can just hit enter and it'll come back up. If you're on a type 2, like VirtualBox, sometimes it wants you to remove the connection. So the little checkbox that says connect virtual disk or virtual CD-ROM. You can uncheck that box. That way it just boots into the OS like it's about to do now on my system. And with VMware Workstation Player or Workstation Pro or even Fusion for Macs, you can just hit enter in most cases. And if it doesn't work out, you can uncheck that box as well. And here we are. We have successfully installed and brought in our Ubuntu system. So some, polishing up items here that we have. You can use your online accounts in conjunction with the system, like your Google account, Nextcloud, Microsoft account, and Ubuntu single sign-on. Yes, you heard right. Microsoft, and Ubuntu and Red Hat actually started working out with each other a lot more. And they're about to make some great things. I'm going to skip this because I don't need to do that. You have Live Patch. It helps keep your computer secure. It applies some security updates, but you can do this on your own. Then we have the Improve Ubuntu. You can send information if you want, but if you want to keep your privacy, have your own dev environment, and not have any processes going on in the background, you can choose not by hitting this box. And then you have your privacy. I don't turn on location settings, but if you feel like giving away your geographical location, then you can check that on. And as we see here, it's going to go, you can use the software to update apps like this. It's going to present you with significant software that allows you to update your applications in your system. I'm not going to do that. In most cases you don't, because you're going to do your update inside your terminal. So check out our next videos, and you'll see in our next video how we go through doing our updates, walking around, digging into the terminal, and the real reason for using Linux. Happy you enjoyed this time. Hopefully you learned something, and I look forward to seeing you in our next segment. Have a safe and secure day.